Welcome everyone. Xaku Prime is finally here, and we can talk about some changes that have kind of happened to or around Xaku that have moved the build around a bit. With the advent of the big damage rework changes we got, where everything shifted with armor and health and just how elements work against different factions and all of that business, Xaku was kind of caught in the crossfire with that, but did not receive any compensatory buffs. So they got a little worse. But we have made the build better to compensate, and things are not exactly bleak for this very good Warframe. With that, before we go any further, I want to talk about the shards I'm currently using. Currently, I'm on 2 Tau Duration Shards and 2 Tau Energy Max Shards, which we're going to get into more so why in a moment. But the final shard slot for me right now is empty. That's because this could be a lot of things. Also worth noting, you don't need any of these shards, especially the Duration Shards are really just more comfortable than anything else. The Energy Max Shards are nice. They definitely don't need to be Taus. You just have some regular blues rolling around, then feel free to toss those in, and those will do an absolutely fantastic job. But this last slot, it could be parkour speed. It could be another Duration Shard. It could be a lot of different things, and I would say it's mostly just a taste. I know some people like cast speed on Xaku. That could be here. All kinds of different things that you could throw in here. I'm currently undecided. It'll probably end up as a parkour shard, but this is very, very flex. The others I'm very happy with and comfortable with this build, but like I said, you don't need the duration ones. With that, the build currently looks like this. A bit unexpected, but we are on Blind Rage. The reason we're on Blind Rage, that we're on 207% strength, and we still have Molt Augmented in, is because with the damage changes, enemies just have a lot more health than they did before. They have insanely less armor, but they have a lot more health than they did prior. With that, Xaku was only ever really dealing in the health department, considering that their 3 will remove the, all of the enemy defenses, both shields and armor. And with that, the more health is the big factor. So the kill rate on Xaku has gone down pretty dramatically from 50% to 25% in some extreme cases. So we need more strength to compensate for that. Going to almost 300% strength whenever you consider growing power really has done a lot for making things a lot easier. Also worth noting for growing power, you don't really need to do this that much because you're mostly worried about Grasp of Loke getting that extra damage and not so much things like the Vast on Time. So you don't need to worry about it very often, but before you cast your 2, do try and shoot like a guy and get a status, which is pretty easy. In order to buff up your Grasp of Loke to maximum power, which we'll talk about more when we're actually playing, to talk about some of the quirks of Xaku. Otherwise, things are relatively normal here, except for our energy economy has received a significant boost. We are now using Energy Nexus. The reason we're using Energy Nexus along with the Blind Rage build is that if we look at the amount of time the Vast on Time lasts, it's about 46 seconds. It's 50 seconds if you put in that last Tau Duration Shard, which is worth noting. But 46 times 3 is about 130, let's call it, just for the sake of rounding. And 130 is only 25 energy off a recast of the Vast on Time every 45 seconds. If you can't find 1 energy orb every 45 seconds, you're in an extremely bad way. So overall, I think that the energy economy here is quite good. It's so good, in fact, that I have found myself just casting the Vast on Time for the damage buff pretty often in missions, which I think is going to be quite good. That is partially because in addition to Energy Nexus helping us out here, we are also running Arcane Steadfast, which gives us a 20% chance for our next 3 abilities to cost no energy. With our very low efficiency, that means that the total value of a proc on Steadfast with our cheapest ability, which is Condemn, our Subsume, which we'll get to in a moment, which costs 40 energy. The minimum output of what Steadfast will give us on every proc is like 120 energy, which is immense, and I personally think better than Energize. Especially whenever you start, assuming you're going to get 1 Vast on Time cast in there, and that's 150 to start with, going over 200 with 2 more casts of Condemn. So very, very high efficiency in terms of what we're getting out of Steadfast, as it is always with the lower efficiency builds. Other than that, we are on an immense amount of strength, a good amount of duration, and of course, all of the range. The reason we're on all of the range, for those that don't know, is because we need these guns to be able to shoot guys far away, and they have a very, very tiny range to start, so we need every single bit we can get, which is also adding the maximum targets, which gives us 16 guns to work with that are going to be surrounding Xaku and shooting everybody. So we're, every single range mod in. With that, we are on Archon Stretch. Now, this is insanely optional. Insanely optional. You actually save 2 whole Forma on this build by not including this, as Energy Nexus, as you can see, fits without even being polarized. This is only to be used if you are on a companion that can give you this effect. None of Xaku's abilities can actually proc Archon Stretch, but because Archon Stretch does not specify Warframe abilities, your companions can do it as well. So if you have a Panzer with the Shocking Claws, it can do it with its Viral Quills. We're going to be doing it with the usual, which is Diriga, that has its Arc Coil that can proc Archon Stretch, and also has some other benefits that we're going to talk about in a second. But this is what's going on with Xaku. A lot more strength necessary, kind of a weirder energy economy, but I think also more consistent, and a really good amount of duration and range. With that, companion-wise, I did want to talk about for a moment Diriga. Diriga is offering a lot here. This is basically making our energy economy usually like pretty perfect between casting Arc Coil constantly to turn on our Archon Stretch, extra 2 energy per second. And every 5 times it casts Arc Coil, we're going to get Mystic Bond, which is another free cast of an ability. So we should be having no problems whatsoever keeping our abilities going. The Mystic Bond thing in like a panic scenario should be able to be used on R4 if you can't get Diriga to cast Arc Coil 5 times in 45 seconds. Something different's going on. You got some crazy nonsense happening that you're going to have to deal with in a different way, I guess. I can't even think of a situation where that would ever happen. In addition to that, Diriga is also helping us with our survivability because, of course, we're spamming Guardian, getting Manifold Bond plus Arc Coil, plus that Mystic Bond and all that good business to be able to use Guardian very, very actively. Every 10 enemies that die should be giving us another proc of Guardian, which should be very helpful. And then Tenacious Bond is here, of course, as well, which is going to be giving us some crit just for our weapons, though. With that, we're on the Volclock. We have the Electricity Viral Radiation setup. The Viral setup is actually very nice here because it's going to be increasing the damage of your 2, but you can really go with whatever elements you want to include here are going to be just fine. And then other than that, I do have the Trumna and the Quasis equipped, but this is really a video about Xaku. I'll have a video tomorrow about the Trumna and the Quasis. But that's what's going on currently. With the changes to how Xaku is against different factions and all the rebalancing that has gone on, I wanted to show Xaku against a bunch of different factions. So we're going to start on the Orokin battle group, the usual Steel Path, level 225, all that good business. And then we'll just kind of move through. We'll do the Murmurs, the Corpus, and the Invested as well. Worth noting, we are going to be, not leveled on Mold Augment with this entire test because I'm going to grab the guns from the first group and just use them for all of the groups. But that is what's going to be going on with these couple of tests to show off here. So throw down the 4, grab the guns from the enemies, throw out our armor strip, which of course activates right away, which is quite nice. And you can see this is, it's not slow by any means. It's of course slower whenever they have armor, but not a big threat to us. Even with armor, they will just die, which is actually really a big boon for Xaku just in general. As before, we had much larger problems with enemies that remained armored. This group as well. Obviously, the enemies in this group are a little bit more of a threat to Xaku because they do tend to blow up when they die. And AoE can be a bit of an issue for Xaku sometimes. But you can see, even the coils and such like that are not a huge deal. The anatomizers, and then the shuffling fragment to round us off there, with the AoEs being the only real thing that's going to be threatening us. I could be popping my 4 on each of these groups, but just to show kind of more generally what you can be expecting. Obviously, these enemies just have shields, so it's really not... I don't even need to pop my 3, really. I could. It'll make them even easier to kill, but the Corpus are really no threat to Xaku outside of the actual threat of killing me. And then the Infested actually received the biggest buff against Xaku's guns, just overall, it seems, as we kill them pretty considerably slower now, but still not at a pace that, is particularly bad either, I would say. So good things all around, still useful against all the factions. I do think that we needed the kind of strength increase that I have given this build in order to get to a nice comfortable spot. Worth noting, if you want to go for something slightly greedier, you can of course go Roar, this is your slight remix of something I was just testing, just using Streamline instead of the Augur Secrets, but I would just use the same exact build here. You can go Roar. I have tried it in the first slot. I ended up just generally not liking it. Sacrificing the really excellent survivability that Condemn gives you access to, which is just the immediate shields, the excellent crowd control that works against a ton of targets, I just think personally is really not worth it. Condemn is just excellent, especially in places like EDA. If you're a Warframe that needs more survivability, it's one of the abilities that is super cheap and can just work everywhere, basically. So excellent subsume, and I think it is excellent on Xaku in particular. But if you do want your 2 to do even more damage, or if you just want a damage buff and you don't feel like you're in danger very often, you can, of course, just go with Roar, and that will do the more damage thing. Turns out it's really good at that. But with that, let's jump on over to Tav and shoot some guys with some floating guns. In we go. Requiem Visor. Not that we're going to choose the Requiem Visor, of course. But yeah, Xaku, like, you know, Prime now. Mostly changes in the game, changing the build. But the additional energy doesn't hurt. Being the only real important stat that has been increased on Xaku Prime. But generally speaking, things are going to function pretty similarly. I will say this is like Grenier, which overall is just kind of a bit worse. Just because they are the faction that was most affected by armor, I would say. I think that's fairly objective. He is chunking through. Like, not insanely fast, but not insanely slow either. We should be at about 100 kpm on this mission, though it's a little map dependent. I will say, like, I have seen this build, like, be at, like, 1110 minutes and such like that, but, like I said, that's probably a little bit more map dependent than anything else. Just getting our 3 and casting through here, killing some guys. Hopefully the enemies start backfilling behind us, which is kind of what I want. Coming from 2 directions is usually pretty good. Shields went down. Boom. Condemn instantly back up. We're at 1,500 shields. One of the interesting things that you can choose to do on this build is actually drop the Umbral Intensify for primed redirection. It just fits in the exact same slot, of course, with no additional Forma. Although you can, I believe, make the build 1 Forma cheaper if you do really want to go with that build as well. And that will give you a very, very large shield to work with. Personally, like, I think 1,500 is plenty, and I think going more down that road is not as useful as just going this, like, higher strength, which is, of course, why the build is what it is. But it is just an option. I think more often than not, the enemies are going to be more of a threat alive than dead, so you having more shields isn't really going to rate super highly most of the time. You see good moving through. Even at, like, the beginning of the mission here, we're at, like, pretty much on rate for that, like, 100 kpm. So I think Xaku does quite nicely. We can, of course, cast our 4 a little more aggressively and get that damage bonus. But it's not exactly necessary. Shooting just a little bit here. Just to get rid of this annoying XMI. But yeah, just Xaku stuff. Like, putting the debuff down on the enemies. Obviously, our 4 is also, like, huge range for box breaking. So if you just kind of want to, like, walk into an exterminate, turn your 2 on, and slap your 4 throughout the level and just, like, grab a bunch of resources while you're killing things through an exterminate. It's a great way to play Xaku. Excellent in, like, horse visors and stuff. Just, like, very chill runs through a lot of different mission types. I will say the armor changes while, like, kind of overall lowering the kill rate, especially, like, when played most efficiently, right, for Xaku. It does make it a lot better at whenever you just don't want to hunker down and, like, put your 3 down in areas, as the enemies will still just die even if they are armored, albeit a little bit slower. But, like, for running visors and stuff like that, I would say overall things are actually a bit easier. See, like, any problems with Overguard not really happening here. We could just throw down some finishers and all that business if we really want to. Throw a 4 out. Probably throw another thing here. Grab some shields. Jade Eximus giving us the business a little bit. Like, just being able to lock down the enemies in a hallway is really nice. Because it's like, you know, you want your 2 to be able to kill them and everything like that. And in the cases where, like, you have an Eximus, like, if they're really high level, well, they're actually, as the enemy level gets higher, you actually kill them faster. Just due to the way, like, the guns on Xaku scale, you will kill them more quickly. Also, speaking of the way the guns scale, we are at 250 kills, and these guns are from 60% less strength ago. So I am actually going to turn my 4 off. This is another benefit of Condemn, is that I can just turn my 4 off really safely. Like, enemies are just able to shoot me now, but I can really easily refresh my 2 in safety of just casting my 1 a bunch. So now I have those 60% higher. Although I didn't make sure to do growing power to it. Not that it super particularly matters if you decide not to go growing power. So we have that extra 60% strength on top. The other thing that's notable about refreshing your 2, for anyone who doesn't know, your 2's like gun strength is based on the enemies that you take it from, not on like the enemies it's shooting. So they will be stronger if you're like in a mission that scales really quickly, like if you're in Cascade or something, where over the course of like 10 minutes, the enemy level could increase like, you know, by 300 or something. You should be refreshing your 2 more often. Although I wouldn't particularly suggest taking Xaku into extremely high level Cascade, as it's kind of a pain more so than it's really worth. But if enemy levels are scaling very aggressively, you should make sure and refresh your 2 more often. With that, we're at 5 minutes. We're at 558 kills. And this is, of course, like, I'm trying not to use my guns. Of course, like, usually you'll want to, like, keep your melee out with Xaku as you're able to block bullets in directions, which just makes your survivability a lot more consistent, of course. Also, hilarious bug that's happening right now. One of my pylons can move. So Jim's just following me around here. He'll be my buddy. This does not move the AoE that they generate. It's just kind of a weird bug that's happening right now. Throw this out. Eximus wants to give us the business, but instead they are now dead. Finally, the Acolyte is here. At 6 minutes. Acolytes, notably, are vulnerable to R1. So hopefully we get you right there. Yeah, violence is vulnerable to the 1, so they can't turn our abilities off if they can't move. So that's not a huge deal for us. Really nice for Xaku to be able to very easily deal with Acolytes, as it can sometimes be a pain for them. Also, like, the large shield buffer and the ability to just repop your shield gate also turns out helps with that. Yeah, Condemn really just makes Xaku a lot more, like, just chill focused. Like, it's a lot more just do what you want. Like, oh, you made a mistake, not a big deal. You are still, of course, vulnerable to statuses, so, like, status situations can be a little sticky. But you can also shield gate through those. Like, if you've got a bunch of heat procs on you, you can just throw your 1 out and it'll absorb all the heat procs over a little bit of time. Which can be especially nice if you have, like, a long hallway of enemies. You just throw your 1 through it and it'll constantly refresh your gate on each enemy it hits. So you're, like, very invincible. In which we have to throw my 4 back up. Also, obviously, you don't have to worry about your 2 doesn't have to worry about the frost bubbles of enemies or anything like that. 774 kills, about a little over 7 minutes. So we're doing a little bit better than 100 KPM. Again, though, I am specifically avoiding using my weapons, as that's not really what, like, this performance test is about. It's about, like, what Xaku can do. Obviously, if you're utilizing your weapons, things are going to be better. Shocker, obviously. But I'm not sure if anyone's watching a Xaku video to watch somebody shoot the Torrid down another hallway. I think you guys probably get how good that weapon is. I think it's probably well understood, actually. Speaking of which, there will be a, like, total, like, another complete video for all of the Incarnans again of each week. I am gonna break that up into individual weeks so I can update them as needed in smaller chunks. But that's going to be starting relatively soon. I'll just start with whatever the current week is so people can update as they get things, too. But that is going to be going on relatively soon. Probably slightly before 1999. Those videos will start coming out each week. Because we did go through and kind of, like, audit, I guess, all of the Incarnate videos. It might be wise to wait for 1999 to start doing those, but, you know, we don't really have an idea of, like, how many new mods we're getting in 1999, which considering we're halfway through November, should be fast approaching, assumably. We have that last dev stream announced, so it can't be, you know, more than a month away. I hope. It's getting a little close to Christmas if we're at that point. Or 3 ended. There we are. I see this doing just a stellar job. A little bit of melee. Just melee a couple of guys. We're over 1,000 kills. We got 30 seconds left to go until we're at like nice 10-minute mark that we like to be at. And this is like kind of an environment where Xaku doesn't thrive, if I'm going to be honest, because like Xaku really wants you to allow enemies to get much higher level for that good scaling to kick in for them. But we're not going to do that. I think things are just fine as they are, and if they get better once you spend the 30 minutes in a mission, then so be it. There's not a whole lot of missions people are spending more than, let's say, an hour in. Yeah, we're on that 10 minutes. Hopefully that Acolyte shows up. We will head towards... Hey, there they are. Nice to see. Never mind. We'll chill out right where we are. Oh, I caught one. And they're gone. Yeah, very easy way to deal with the Acolytes. They can't really handle it, turns out. Yeah, and then this, exiting the mission, is going to show why I'm probably going to go a parkour speed. Because, I don't know about you guys, but I've gotten very used to having at least one parkour shard on a lot of Warframes. And, it can be tough to go back. But yeah, that's Xaku. Happy with the Prime. Think they look nice. Oh, one thing that's worth mentioning for Xaku is you can now choose to have them always be corporeal or always be a skeleton. As you saw there, I was in my 4, but I was still completely armored. So that's a cool new choice that they added that I'm really a huge fan of. But yeah, that's going to do it for Xaku. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. I will see y'all tomorrow for the Trumna and the Quazes. And, yeah. All right, we're back from TennoCon, and the Streamathon is going to continue. But there will, of course, I will try and have there be videos as well as the Streamathon at the same time if I can. Also, thank you to the $10 patrons: Athean, Alex Parnham, Arbiter Daydream, Benuven, Fruta Salazar, Canalafra, World 3, Dylan Dworsky, Athrain, Afan, James Hearthstone, JC4 Science, Josh, Luzanth, Malik X Williams, Mark Smith, Mikakel, Minty Ginja, Michta, Nerve, Ruby, Sanyu, Skur, Sharp247, Tamrielic Wastelander, Tester ZWP, The Coupon of Death, Tomeworm, Victor Palmer, Waifu Wars, Wowdado1, and Sarah Fear. And of course, all of my other patrons as well. It is incredibly appreciated for all of your support. But yeah, we're gonna try and keep the videos a little bit more regular while the Streamathon continues. And of course, we do have a free to play through coming soon.